Okay, welcome to episode 27 of the Total Hockey Training Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Scahan, and before I introduce my next guest, just want to remind everybody, all the hockey players out there who might not have a gym or a trainer, we are rolling at trainheroic.com, Total Hockey Training. We're in the middle of our off-season program. And also, this is now available on Apple's and iTunes. So if you like the show, if you find some valuable information, please like and share it. And also a quick plug for Total Hockey Training 2, my book that's available as an ebook. So let's get into our next guest, a really good friend of mine, haven't seen him for a while, Nelson Ayotte. And Nelson was the high performance director of the Columbus Blue Jackets most recently from 2016 through 2011. He spent 11 seasons as the head strength and conditioning coach of the St. Louis Blues. There's a large number of other accolades on his resume I don't want to get into because I want to talk to him more about it in the show. Nelson, good to have you, my friend.
I'm happy to be here, Sean. Nice to see you too.
Yeah, it's great to see you. And how have you been?
Um, Pretty good. Like it's a huge change of pace, but it's a nice change of pace.
Awesome. Yeah, same here. And I want to get into all of that. Could you tell the listeners where you're from and what got you into strength and conditioning and high performance coaching?
I got that question often, and it's a series of accidents. Uh, the funny, like at the base, I used to play hockey, and my parents used to say, like, don't kid yourself. You're not gonna make a living with hockey. And funny enough, when as soon as I joined the St. Louis Blues, the first phone call I made was to my mom. I said, "Mom,
Yeah.
now I make a living off hockey." Not as a hockey player, but when you're young, you don't think about that stuff.
Yeah.
So I played hockey, and there was a point my parent couldn't pay anymore, so I transferred to cross country skiing
Okay.
at that time. So it was quite a transition, and in the 80s, it was a ski was for people with a bit less money than hockey. It was good. I was a good aerobic athlete at that time, and then I joined the Canadian Forces, the military, because I know I was going to be able to be paid full time to ski with the biathlon team. Biathlon is like the Canadian drive by, and it's cross country skiing and shooting. So we did that, and I did that with the military. And as I was going through cross country skiing, then I gravitate the scale over there too until I reached a point to be the head coach of the Canadian Forces team in biathlon. And in Canada, the national team in biathlon is 96% military.
Okay.
So if you control the military team, you also control the civilian team, which is Sports Canada and the World Cup and Europa Cup and World Championship and so on.
Now, why is that, Nelson? Because of the shooting aspect of the sport?
Yeah, I think so. I think so, and worldwide as well too. There are some countries, if you're not in the military or in the police force, you're not even allowed to have a gun, like in Japan or England or places like that. So the people that do biathlon often is military. The convenience, the range. If you look at biathlon at the Olympics, it's always outside of the village.
Hmm.
It's in a remote control because of the shooting range and
Right.
what it entails.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's actually after World War II, biathlon disappeared from the Olympic programs because people didn't want to see rifles anymore. So they took it out of the Olympic program, but the military base kept a world championship
Okay.
closed, like for the military people, like in Sweden, in Norway, in Germany, in Russia, and in Canada, in the US. The US have a great biathlon team as well too. They train in Jericho, Vermont, and Bozeman, Montana, and Lake Placid, of course. And the military kept this, and I think it got reintroduced. And don't quote me exactly, but it might be 72 or something like that. It got reintroduced, but at that time, there's no civilian that were able to do the sports properly.
Okay. Okay.
well, the military started to send their team, and then we end up. If you look at the World Military Championship every year, it's basically the Olympics.
Hmm.
The guy that are the Olympic champion, like if you look like through the history in the past 50 years, are like probably 80% military. So so it stays like that, and then I'm going like very long to to
It's
come in.
okay.
But
Yeah, please.
that was my path. It's very very unorthodox, and it's not. I I don't think it will be done again, or it'll be. But it was the way. So I end up with the Sports Canada and the Olympic and national team,
Yeah.
and that's when I met hockey players on the Canadian national team. So Chris Pronger, Al McInnes, and those guys were on the Canadian team, and that's where I met Charles Poliquin as well too. Charles actually was the strength coach for Biathlon Canada.
Oh, wow.
So that's how, because in Canada there was strength coaches that were, if you were a strength coach by trade, they were giving you sports.
Okay.
So Charles was in charge of speed skating, biathlon, and so all you do is you do the strength and conditioning for the Olympic sports at the Olympic training centers. So me, I met Charles through that. So basically, Charles was working for Biathlon Canada when I got introduced to him.
Okay.
So he was our strength coach. So then through that, then I got through Al McInnes and Chris. So then those guys, when they saw what we're doing in skis and like the nature of the sports, like this, the strength combined with the endurance, they start to ask us if we're able to prepare their off-season program.
Wow. Okay.
And this is how I got. So then Al introduced me to Doug Waite and then to Keith Kachuk and to, so then before you know it, I have 8 guys from the St. Louis Blues, not being the strength and conditioning coach of the St. Louis Blues.
Wow. That's awesome.
So
Real
yeah.
quick, where did you grow up? In Quebec, I assume, correct?
The Quebec province, but
Okay.
I'm from Joliette. It's a small city. Actually, it's about 40 kilometers northeast of Montreal. So
Got it.
that's where I grew up. Yeah.
And so obviously, how did you get into cross country skiing? Is there hills there? Was
Yeah,
it
no,
a cultural
it's
thing?
snow country. It's snow country. People like it's typical. Like I'm a typical Canadian, born 1970. Started to play hockey at 4 year old, and if we had like a good ice storm, I was able to put my skate on my front porch and then skate to the outdoor rink in the
Okay.
street before the salt and the calcium were put in the street. So we were skating in the streets. We were, so snow was part of what we were doing.
That's awesome. Tell me about part of your resume. You talked about your level 5 national Canadian coaching program. Could you tell the listeners how, I guess, rare that is?
Because it was a strenuous, it's rare because you have to be very fortunate to be able to do the program. First of all, it's pretty extensive. It was long and expensive. At that point, I had the advantage to be in the military. So basically, the military support me through all those years, because we know in the 80s and 90s there was no such thing as, same thing when I told my mom I wanted to be a coach. She said, "That's very cute, but what you are going to do for a living?" And yeah. So my parents were very supportive, but it was the 70s. I was a different. We were raised a different way. So. Uh, so then at that time, being a young skier, because I joined the military very, very young. And in 1994, I missed the Olympic trials. I didn't qualify in 94. And so then my commanding officer, my colonel, came and says, "You know what? You start to be old." I'm 24-year-old at that time. He said, "You start to be old for the sports." But he said, we think you have something for coaching. He said, "What if we pay for your education, and we'll detach all the best biathlete in Canada, male and female, and they're gonna come, and you're gonna help the program with that, and we're gonna give you athletes, and we're gonna fund the training camps and the competition, the Europa Cup and the World Cup and the military World Championship and so on." So I accepted at that time. So I got into the Canadian program. So I did my level 1 in '89, but it's more like an introduction, like more like a volunteer type of program.
Sure.
So you do your level 1 and you like it, then you do your level 2, then level 3. It started like now it's people from the university, like it's exercise physiologists and professor that are coming to evaluate your level 3. So you have to prepare like a yearly periodization.
Wow.
So a yearly program for your team at that time, and you have to present. You go in front of a committee, and they basically they correct you. So I did that, and after that, it's level 4 and 5. But level 4 and 5, it's like I said, because of the 80s and 90s, there was no, you were not going in school to be a coach.
Hmm.
That didn't exist at that time. But we had something in Canada that's called, it was at the University of Victoria, it was the International Coaching Institute. And this was about like more than 50 countries in the world that were participating in that program.
Wow.
And it's summer and winter. And basically, you go there in the summer in the university. I was going there in the summer because in the winter, we were in season. And when my season was finishing and I had some report to do in the season, then I was getting through school like exercise physiology, nutrition, and sports psychology, biomechanics, and so on with the University of Victoria. So the whole process lasts 12 years.
Wow.
Because you're not going to school full time, there's two of the tasks. You have to bring an athlete from a junior age to compete on the World Cup circuit. And if you haven't brought that athlete, you cannot submit your task. You
Okay.
have to be the coach that was that with that athlete since the start.
Got it. So
So
that's
you
why it could take forever. That's why it could take 12 years.
about 12 years, and not just that. If you're not on the work, there's another task. It's technical, tactical during a world event. So if you're not on the staff of the World Championship or on the World Cup circuit, you cannot submit that task.
Okay.
So there's only 4 or 5 guys that can in every sport that can do that. So I was fortunate. Like I said, the military paid for sending me every summer and supported my journey through coaching. And so by the time by 2000, then I finished at level 5. But at the start, level 1 to 5, there was more than 1 million people that went through the program, and I was this number 74 to be graduated at that time. And that's basically how I got my work visa to go in the United States and be able to work with the St. Louis Blues.
That's awesome. That's a great story, and that's pretty neat. And so yeah,
Thank you.
I want to talk about that transition because I do recall I think I visited Charles in Arizona back, I want to say 2004, and
I would have
think
been there.
I think you were working in the weight room. I you probably remember this. Charles just had sustained a bite from a spider. I don't know if you remember that. He got a spider bite like a couple days before I was there, and I visited with him.
He hated bikes.
Yeah. He ate a lot of things, I imagine, right?
Yeah, that's another podcast.
Yeah. No, but I think I remember you were in the weight room. I think I want to say maybe David Boston or maybe Dougie Waite was in the weight room at that time. I didn't know you then, but I remember like at the time I was, Charles was big on T Nation with his Q&As and all of his articles. I think he mentioned you in one of his articles. I'm like, oh, that must be Nelson. But I wish I got to meet you then, but I got to meet you
Yeah, me
later.
too.
Yeah. So talk about working with Charles, and I talked to Ben Prentice on one of his shows, and he gave some insight to it. And a friend of mine, Preston, used to work for him. Like talk about
Yes, Preston, I know that.
yeah, talk about Charles and his mentorship and all of his why he was so good at what he did.
Yeah, but Charles is there's a lot of people. He fall in the category to be the best at what you do. You have to, often we have a big misconception that balance is important and like family life, work life, and social life, and so on. But if you want to be the best at what you do, there's really no balance. Like
Correct.
it's an utopia. And Charles lived for strength and conditioning his whole life. Like I was mentioning before, he was at the Calgary Winter Olympic Training Center for a reason. So he was our number one strength coach. So that part of the program of the level 5, when you do your strength and conditioning program, when you finish the program for the national team, you were submitted to Charles. He was the one who was correcting you.
Okay.
So, and Charles not going to give anything Like there was no free pass, no free lunch with Charles.
Right.
Like your feet was completely red, and I've seen people getting out of there crying because, and Charles kind of targeted strength coaches at that time, and I mean, like, I was in biathlon, I was not a strength coach,
Right.
and then you have to submit a strength program that is evaluated by Charles Poliquin. So that's why I'm saying those 21 tasks is the best person in our country evaluate you on that one.
That
Same
was
thing with
Charles.
cycling, and in Canada it was Charles. So then that's where I got with him at that time, and he heard of me for what I was doing in aerobics and the way I was training people in aerobics, and anaerobics was very close to the way he was training them in the gym.
Okay.
So he liked that because it's something aerobic and anaerobic he didn't want to touch at that with a 10-foot pole unless it was only pure sprinters. For anything that was 0 to 10 seconds he loved, anything above 10 seconds he hated.
Right.
So, but so then him and it clicked early on, and when I finished my level 5, then I went to do a mentorship to his facility. And when I finished after the week, I was still in the military at that time. And after the week, he said, "You know what?" He said, I'd like you to come and take the gym." Like he said, I have a lot to do, but I said, "I need someone on the floor on a day-to-day basis with the athletes that we have." And he said, I'm offering you a job here." So that was in Arizona at that time. And so then I said I accepted, because at that I felt at that time strength and conditioning was probably my weakest, uh, one of my weakest string in my coaching arsenal. I thought I had a good grasp on everything else, but I thought strength and conditioning, and I was like, who better than going to work with Charles on a daily basis?
Right.
Uh,
And
so
so,
that's
yeah, that's awesome. So that was probably 2004 then, 2003, 2004, around that time.
yeah, no, I went, yeah, I went there in 2 or 3, but actually we knew each other since 1994.
Got it.
But I moved in Arizona, and so I quit the military in May 2003. I was getting married June
Okay.
2003. So basically, I got married, got my honeymoon, and went to Phoenix.
Got
That
it.
was and so yeah, 2003. I was there until 2005 when we opened the private center in St. Louis.
That's right. You open up the private center in St. Louis, and from what I understand, guys like Prongs and Dougie Wade and Al McInnes, Keith Kachuk were training there, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah,
So
everyone from the Blues. We had 28 clients in Phoenix. When I moved to St. Louis, we brought 27 with us.
got it. And so talk about the private sector for a moment there, because that's what I'm doing now. I have my own gym. Talk about that from your perspective. Did you enjoy it? What did you think
Uh,
about it?
yes, I enjoy it, and it was a huge part of my development as well too.
Sure.
Like I was not a gym guy. That's the opposite. I was an outdoor guy, and I was coming. Like I said, Charles showed me a lot of the ropes. I would say that 80% of what I apply and I know in strength and conditioning is directly coming from Charles. And so, in order, I would have never been able to feel comfortable to open my gym in or a gym in St. Louis at that time. The private sector is very, very different. I was in a team environment, went to the private sector, and then went into a team environment again.
Sure.
And then with amateur sports, and then private, and then professional sports. It's completely three different things. I like the private sector, but the challenge is bigger. Challenge are bigger because at that time too, what people forget is I also had NFL player, MLB player, PGA, basketball. So I have all the pro sports. So it's seasonal.
Hmm.
So your hockey players leave, then the baseball players start to come, like basketball player come at the same time as the hockey player, football. So there's a rotation all year round.
Hmm.
When you become just so at that time I was still in multi sports,
Hmm.
but and when I became like you, like Sean hockey or Nelson hockey, then it's total difference. It's very different because, like I said, now your facility, yes, it's toward the hockey clientele, but in the season it's your low season, and in their low season it's your high season. So
Right.
there's a lot of challenges.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. So then it was on to the St. Louis Blues. I want to say 2005, correct?
Yes, yes, that's correct. Yeah.
So you started right after that lockout?
Yeah, exactly. But Al McInnes was going into retirement,
Yep.
forced retirement, and everybody know like the day he had to retire, he was still best scoring D in the NHL after 21 years. He
Yeah.
was 41-year old, but because of his eye, he had to stop. And then the Blues told him, "We have something for you after." And Al knew after 204 they had no strength coaches over there. So then he said, "Nelson, after the lockout, we'll have to. We'd like to have you on board." So I had a meeting with Larry Plow and Mike Kitchen, who was the new head coach after Quenneville at that time,
Sure.
to start to help them. But I was still having the private facility, so I was part time
Yeah.
with. I was going with the Blues when I was not going with them on the road, or I was doing some road trip, but not all of them. And sometimes, like the rookie camp was in my gym.
Oh, good.
So the,
That's easy.
yeah, so then so basically we give it was a give and go because I had associated people. I was a minor owner in that gym. I was just the majority. I had two other owners with me. So we were given it was a back and forth with the team at that time. And at one point, then the player says, we need to have you with the team all the time. And so that's basically it. I think I signed my first NHL contract was in the 20 yeah, January 2007, something like
Awesome. Good for you.
that.
That's great. So you're at St. Louis for all those years, and one thing I remember, like we would always hang out at the combine, and well, a lot of us did, but like me, you, and Potenza, and a couple other guys, would have a good little, would get dinner and have some wine and all that. But I always remember conversations with you, like about evaluating hockey players. So when you're at the combine, what do you like? I happen to know someone is going to the combine in a few weeks. This is going to come out in June, by the way. But I happen to know someone who's going to the combine in a few weeks. In your opinion, what are you looking for? I remember we were talking, I think you were looking at VMO strength or VMO knee stability in the VMO. Could you give some insight onto that, buddy?
But yeah, of course. And is the person you're talking for the combine, is it someone related to you?
Yes.
You didn't want to say, or
Well, it's my son. My son's going to the combine, and
but,
I
by the
wish,
way,
what? I really wish we were still working. Well, I guess if I could get two days back, it would be me and you at the combine watching him test, so we could watch him and then go have some wine and some dinner afterwards. But
but I wouldn't want to be the kid.
no, poor
Yeah.
kid.
But and by the way, congratulations to him and good luck
Thanks.
over there.
Yeah,
But the evaluation come a lot from what I've been told in the gym at that time. So I was putting more emphasis on the structural balance more than the results of the tests themselves. So for the jump, for instance, I always told and Jarmo Kekalainen, who's a good friend of mine, who was the GM of the Columbus Blue Jackets, what was the head scout with the Blues at that time.
yeah,
We
sure.
had a discussion as well too, like on the long jump or any type of jump. I was not looking at the results. I was looking like at what time each feet is moving off the floor. So sometimes one will go before another. And so any sign of on the coordination or any sign of coordination issue for me was kind of a red flag for skating. So even if the person jump was not as long, but the coordination was stable and was strong and was even on both feet, then I was confident into the capability of developing more speed in that athlete.
Got it.
And there was a lot, and same thing with the VMO. If and I was trying to identify, is it the problem that is coming from the structure of the athlete? And because sometimes, let's not kid ourselves, the sports make us imbalance. It doesn't, like, the sports actually create imbalances and injuries. And so was it something that is coming through training, coming through hockey? I mean, was it something that it will be easy to correct? If I see that the VMO was never really taken care of or being addressed, then I always said, if we can address this and fix it, then we're going to be it's going to be an easy road in front of us. But if there's, like I said, if there's a coordination problem with this, then I don't like the chance to make that athlete faster.
That's awesome. And as a strength and conditioning coach, like for me personally, I would love it when if someone who I said, "Wow, this kid's gonna be a good skater, a good player in the NHL." I would absolutely love it when they would draft a kid. You know, for me, it's
Yes.
guys like Kyle Palmieri, who's still skating for the Islanders, Luke Cunnin, who got drafted by the Wild. I remember there was one kid who actually Columbus drafted. The kid was phenomenal on the broad jump test, and you probably evaluated him. His mom was a sprinter in
Yes.
Canada. His
I
dad was
know
a
where you're going
CFL
there.
player.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, what was his name?
Oh, geez.
Crouch
Canadian
something
kid.
or something like that?
Oh, yes, I know. Yeah. Oh,
Like
geez. I wish I could go back in my. I probably have the results on my computer here.
yeah, yeah, like, and that's the funny part, like, how would, not to go off here a little bit, but I would take notes on my computer when I work with the old team, the Ducks, and I would get to know some of my Wild players, and I'd pull up my
Foodie,
notes on
DM
them, and
Foodie. Sorry.
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is he still in the National League? I
Yes.
yeah,
Yes. I think. Yeah. I think the Blue Jackets traded him this year. Again, his skating speed was phenomenal.
yes.
But even in what we do, I remember Andy Murray one year. That's telling me Andy Murray from the part of your country too,
Yeah.
and he still live in Minnesota. And he was Nelson. I heard you're a good strength and conditioning coach, and you can make player faster. And he said, "Congratulations." He said, "You this is true. You did it." He said that player now is out of position way faster than last year. So,
Yeah,
so
that's awesome.
we, we just have a small smidge of influence on
Yes,
the athletic capacities. So
yes,
that's
but
basically
I
what we're bringing to the
going back to
table.
the combine though, like, I would sit there with my Wild players and would go over my notes about them a few years later. It'll be like, yeah, um, needs to put on lean body mass, or he has no power. Like, it was just funny to go back and look at those notes. But I again, I used to love it when I'd say, all right, listen, like this kid here, say Kyle Palmieri, explosive, must be a great skater. I never watched the kids play. It was great to see them take a prospect that you really not, I wouldn't say fight for. That's not my job. That wasn't my job, but to say I really like this kid's athletic and strength and conditioning potential, right?
Yes. Yeah, but there was that, and there was also Yarmo did often and he knew. He told me after a couple of years. I said, and me, like sometimes I was associating with a kid not training. That it could be the kid could be lazy
Yeah.
but sometimes the scouts know something else. And there was a guy like David Perron
Oh yeah.
who never trained. So you see, when someone didn't train, there's no coordination of muscle. They just go under the bench and they collapse. They can't even keep the bar straight. And I was like, this kid's never trained. But then
Yeah.
Yarmo was like, but if you train him, like so basically you had a if a kid was highly trained, like what's the potential? It's not a
Yeah.
lot, but if the kid was lowly trained and the kid was not lazy, and I'm saying it's crude words here, but this is how we were talking behind the scene.
Right.
And but if he trains and he's a hard worker, then actually, and the Blues for a while they were drafting that way too,
Yeah.
and guys like, and I'm gonna say like TJ Oshie and David Perron and Patrick Berglund, there were three kids that we drafted the same year. That none of them had a good training background in the weight room before that, but
Right.
they all turned things around and became actually they all uh, yeah they
Yeah,
all
that was for me, that was Corey Perry for sure, a kid who had the grit and determination and the skill, but I think he jumped maybe 17 inches at the combine. You know, like
yeah, but look at the player. Yeah.
yeah, but look at the player, right? Exactly. So like those situations were also very fun to work with from a prospect's development, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. No, oh, yeah. Again, like us, it's same thing. I always compare coaching to parenting. You always start more as a directive type of leadership to a suggestive type. Like the goal with a kid, it's to bring it to independence later on in his life, and you hope that the value and everything you showed him, then the kids use that and as tools later on. Same thing with an athlete. You
Yeah.
start with him to tell them what to do, and then later on you sit them with them and how about we'll put this, and you become more like a sounding board for them at that time. You're more like like your role is evolving with their career as well.
I I think that's a great point because you're right, because maybe early on when a prospect's younger, they become NHL player. There is a time when you can kind of not necessarily just let them go, but you become more of a resource than a thorn in their side sometimes, right? Like
Yes.
that makes sense, right?
Yes, I know. Yeah, absolutely.
But
Yeah, because the goal is
one more
go ahead. Sir.
combine story. I remember um it's actually two defensemen that are still playing. This was probably, I don't know, mid 2000s. I was watching Zach Bogosian do the tests, and he
Oh,
was just
beast.
beast and just killing all the tests. And I remember one of my scouts said, "Yeah, he's pretty good, but the guy over there is going to go a lot higher than him." And I'm like, "That guy?" And he was pushing away on the VO2 max test. It was Drew Doughty. And so,
Oh, there you go.
like I was like, "Okay, yeah, yeah, you're right." So, like very, very much so. But those things were fun and a fun part to be, around, and more from a personal perspective, more fun to be around with guys like you and to meet up and talk training and all that, right? So that was fun.
But that was we were talking about the GM meeting earlier before we get on air, and it was kind of our meeting every year too. I was
Yeah,
actually something like the combine is strenuous in the sense that we have to stay focused when we sit there and going through the whole spectrum of kids that are coming, and our scouts want us to check every single one. They want their list to be proof of like
yeah,
no mistake and because their job's on the line, our job's on the line. But in the rest of the time, in the evening we had and in the meals that I think the brotherhood over there was actually that was something that I was looking for every single year as well too.
yeah. That's a great point. So talk about, in your opinion. So obviously, you started as the strength and conditioning coach of the St. Louis Blues, and when you departed the NHL, you were the high performance director of the Blue Jackets. Could you talk about that evolution? I mean, you started in 2005, and what did you see? Obviously, you work with some players who had that instinct in them to be the best of the best, but you've also had to kind of push and nudge some players at the beginning, but maybe towards the end you had to do less of that because I think professional athletes understood the process. So and talk about like culturally in general, like how the I mean, when I started with Anaheim, we had myself, a head athletic trainer, and two equipment managers. Like that was our training staff. And now all the staffs are humongous in terms of numbers. So talk about that if you would.
But this yeah, same thing. So it evolved. So same as you, as I came in 205, it was not the early days, but it was kind of the team was starting to have, because I remember there was not every team that has a strength coach at that time too. There were still athletic trainer. There were athletic trainers slash strength coaches,
Yes.
and so it was a rotation at that time, and it was very different because same thing like when the guys like when Al and Doug Waite and Pronger, those guys were coming, they were paying for me to train them.
Right.
When you're playing with a team, then it's different. You have I
Mhm.
always have like you have the 5, 10, 5, like 5 the yes coach, the 10 maybe coach, and the 5 no way coach. I'm not gonna. So in everything you do, in nutrition and in every decision you try to make, so that was different.
I like that.
And
Five,
then,
ten,
yes,
five.
there was an evolution in the Blues at that time. We were one on the first team, and I was very proud of that fact to start to bring all of our athletes back in the summer for training in St. Louis. And at one point, I remember we had 28 guys in July, like in
Yeah.
St. Louis, because I came with the St. Louis, we're dead last in the NHL. We're the worst team in the league. And Mike Kitchen, he said, "Why do you want to work with us?" I said, "Where do you want to go? There's only one way, and it's up." I said, "We're at the bottom." And he said, "Okay, yeah, you got a point." So I said, "I don't want to go for Detroit right away, right now. It was their heyday. Like
Right.
I can't screw it up more than anything else." But Detroit was one of those teams that had no strength coaches at that time.
And they're probably the
And
last one to actually hire one,
yes, yes,
right?
to get on board with that
Because
after
they were so
that,
good for so long, they'd probably say, "Why
they didn't see the
something that's
need.
not broken?" Yeah.
There was no need for it. But then, as the wheel was turning, and as those players had kids, and then left and trained, and then players started to see at the end. I had players that was like, Nelson, I need to squeeze 1 or more 2 years out of my career. That's why I'm here, and that's and like the last couple of years of a trainer or of a players are very very important. It's the last contract they can squeeze a little bit of money for you and their family, and then go on in what they like, and it's hard to let go as well too. So that was part of it. That was also our role too, not in injury prevention and prolonging the career of the players. And so then with the team again, like you have, so people get on board and they go with it, and then like you said, that now at one point everybody was training. Then when you and I, and when the Detroit hired their strength coach, then everyone has strength coaches, and so the dynamic changed in the NHL. Even us, as we started to organize an association,
Mhm.
like Roger didn't have to bring the same points for 5 years in a row because we're not going anywhere.
Right.
and and
Remember those
but
days.
we were evolving all together, and
Yes.
that was the beauty of it. And at one point, then there was other model that were adopted. And but me, I was coming from Olympic sports too, so I always thought it was a little thin in the NHL
Mhm.
on the support staff.
Mhm.
And I always thought that the NHL was a bit behind the ball on that, like for the type of sports, like you think it's very hockey. It's very very. There's not a sport that you have to you hold your gravity center like on a small blade and turn left and right and just with weight transfer. And it's very very complex. And I thought it was very light for what they had to do and for the type of money they were they were putting in there.
Yes.
So yeah, so then that evolved, and then there's other sports with the we know basketball, football have more money, so they started to grow up their staff, and I think that started to trickle down in the NHL. And me, when I saw that, I took the opportunity to say, hey, we need to be one of the first mover on that too, and because I was a performance director too for Biathlon Canada, for Biathlon Quebec before, and when I was with Charles, I was the high performance director of the center. I was not a strength and conditioning coach at that time. So overviewing the biomechanics and the nutrition and that. So because we were already doing that a lot by default
Yes.
in the group. Prepare like the meal prep like for hotel or for planes or for, so there was a lot. And then if the management wanted to hire like a sports psychologist, so they were asking, hey Nelson, who did you work at in the past? So basically there was a lot of mangling between the high performance director and the strength coach. So that's when I saw the door opening with the Blue Jackets. I just jump on the opportunity, and now even now the strides are even further, and the team are keep it's
Yeah.
coming at large. First, we were like 4 or 5 high performance director, and then same
Yeah.
thing, the wheel turned just like it did for the strength coaches, and now almost everyone has one.
Oh, that's great. I think that's how it should be. It's just, you know, you wanna make sure that it's working, right? And, like, I remember, Brian Murray, who I used to work with years ago. I was reading a book. It was about Vince Lombardi, and it was called What It Takes to Be Number One.
Yes,
And Brian Murray walks by me on a bus one time, and he says to me, "Do you know what it takes to be number one?" He goes, "I'll tell you. Good effing players." And I'm like,
yes,
"Yeah, 100%." So, like, that's the thing, like, I guess with the salary cap now, like, when are we gonna get into a situation where, like, every it's working, right? It's working. You still have some teams with with, I guess, lower numbers of staff members who are still winning cups, and you have the high performance teams that aren't even in the playoffs. Like, when are we gonna see that come to fruition? When everyone gets on board with that?
But I think so. I always, and that's something I say since day one, since my amateur sports time on the world circuit to the professional. There's one common point here, and I
Yes.
told that speech to Andy Murray, Ken Hitchcock, Mike Kitchen, Tortorella, like everyone. I say, there you go. Here we are, the NHL. In our days, 30 teams and so on. So we all have the best players, we all have the best equipment, we all have the best food, we all have the best coaches. We have the best of everything. So I said, where do you win? I said, you win in the details.
Yeah.
The team that's going to take the most detail together and going to put that together is the team that's going to win. And of course, if the players don't buy it, it's not going to work either too.
Right.
Uh, but if you have a team that and it has to come inside the locker room that they say, because often now at the end us every time the difference between my first days and my last day when we're making a decision on the traveling on the first day in the NHL, we were sitting with the traveling coordinator and so on and the aircraft people, and we're making the schedule for the year for the players. When I finished with the Blue Jackets, we had the captain and the assistant captain in the office with us, and we were planning with them. And like, cause like there's a rookie dinner, like there's event or there's back to back
Hmm.
in Vegas and LA, and there's cities that we know that the players want to explore a little more, and they're gonna say, no, we're gonna have our rookie dinner there. So there's gonna be alcohol involved, and we might not be at our best shape in the next 2 days. But so when is the most optimal time to put it in the calendar that affect the performance the least?
Yeah. I love that.
And the decisions were all made before by only the coaching staff and the GM, and
Yeah.
so so now there's like I think all the pro because if the players buy the detail and that mentality and you involve them in the process, so then they take ownership into you can come back and say, hey, it's not me that's on the power trip right now. We sat down and we made a plan that we thought that this would be the best way to go.
I love that because one, it puts responsibilities on the players and they feel that they're involved instead of management or coaches having the iron fist dictating when they could do something like that. Because then you get in a situation where the players are going to say, screw it. They're just going to do it when they want anyways.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, of course, it's their show.
yeah, I love that. And that's good. It's collaboration, right?
Yes, yes, I
Cohesion.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
But I
that's
think
great.
if you can bring the culture to want to be like a like you
Together.
don't do the thing the halfway, like okay, but because usually when you sit down, it's because okay, yeah, nobody's happy, and you experienced it unless you win the Stanley Cup. It's not a good season. It always come at a point that it wasn't good.
Right. No, it's so
It
true.
doesn't matter. It
It's
doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter. It's so true because 31 other teams, even if
Uh,
some teams, oh, we made the playoffs, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day,
the
it
next
doesn't
year
matter.
the next year is how okay, how do we go to round one, how do we go to round two, how do we go to conference final, how
Yeah.
like on the Blues we got struck like at our best at the same time with Chicago and LA,
Yes, you did.
and
Yes.
you guys were just coming like San Jose, Anaheim, and like you like the West Coast trip, everybody was you were not, you were if you were getting back coming back with 2 to 3 points, you were happy. Like
Yes.
that was a good trip, and the West was big, and it was so. But then, as soon as the season's over, the next day you're in the office, you're in the GM's office, and okay, what can we change to be better? Like there's no
No,
good
no,
job
zero.
for
Even won the cup. Even we won the
yeah,
cup. It was
yeah. Now we need to do it again.
few days later, like, okay, what are we gonna do with this guy? This guy, it's like, oh my God. But
Yeah,
yeah, like I remember like teams coming through when they had to go all the teams that came through California, you pretty much had to play 3 games in 4 nights. And it was
yes,
Anaheim, San Jose back to back, day off, then
yeah,
LA, or LA, Anaheim back to back, then San Jose. And at in those years, those were three tough, hard, heavy teams, right? Those
Yes.
were fun.
Oh yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And then we took the torch after that, the Chicago Blackhawks and the Blues, and so now when you
Yes.
were same in Nashville, when you were coming in the Midwest, it was our division was like
Yes.
we knew the first round was it could have been the final of the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
We knew it, like every single year, and I remember it was oh geez, the GM in LA.
Was it Dean Lombardi back then?
Yeah, Dean at that time. And when he saw me at my first year in Columbus, he said, remember the battle we had with you guys? And because it was like, us, maybe we were going to lose that game, but there were going to be a lot of people in the trainer's table at the
Yes.
at the end of that game. Like half
Absolutely.
the team's going to be there, and we're getting proud of that too. That was something we like. If you come here, you're going to earn your 2 points. It's not going to be two free points, no matter the way
Right.
you get that. So, but it was like that. So that was a great time. And again, like for a strength coach, being recognized as a physical team for us, it's kind of the
Yes.
pinnacle. Well, too,
Oh,
because
100%.
everyone we have 30,000 other strength coaches in North America that says to our GM that they can do the job better than us. So
Yes.
and
100%.
same thing, the pressure that comes with the territory as well too. But when you're GM and when even though in the league it starts to be recognized, oh, this is a physical team, then that's the personal tap on the shoulder when you go to bed at night. Then you said, okay, all right, I think the program works.
Yes. And when you have that and you have very low number of injuries, when you have that combination and you win, and I don't care. Like if you're a strength and conditioning coach, you deserve a pat on the back. And when you have that saying about your team, 100%.
Absolutely, absolutely, same here. We agree
Yes.
100. Yeah, no doubt about that.
Awesome. So what are you up to nowadays, buddy?
I'm back I played golf. I started golf right after my career.
Okay.
So I had a set that was I unwrapped it. And my set was 12-year old. I unwrapped it in St. Lucia, and the pro I hired over there, Regis, was the Caribbean champion in 1983.
Wow.
He was like, he said, your set is new, but it's old. Yeah, I was unwrapping it on the range. And so I took golf. So I spent 2 winters, 14 months in St. Lucia.
Hmm.
So my wife and I were going there and coming back, and we came back this year. We stayed here because our son joined the Canadian Forces. Now an officer with the Canadian Forces. Our youngest son
Hmm.
was finishing university, and he needed help, like to with his room and board. So
Hmm.
we came back here to help him. He's with his girlfriend, and in February, I told my wife, I said, I've been at home for long enough now. I went to a little private gym that we have here in town. I said, hey, do you need help? And the kids behind the desk, he said, are you qualified, sir? So I said, do you have an email? I'll send you my resume. So I send him my resume. And 2 hours later, it's the owner of the gym that called me. He said, what are you doing here? So,
Come on
so I had
in.
a, and I
Yeah.
had the meeting. He said, we need someone to help us with the personal training on the floor here. And I said, yeah. And I said, I'd be interested to get some of the clients. So I'm working with clients that has issues to find personal training. Like, so I have a kid with cerebral palsy. I have an older person that had 2 heart attacks. So no one wanted to train them. So I said, you know what? I'll take that. And
Awesome.
so I'm training these people on trying to make their life a little bit better. And there's no changes. There's no changes than when I was training the players.
That's
It's
awesome.
just that want to improve in either their daily life or
I love to hear
so.
that because you can dictate what you do with your schedule, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
yes.
that's
Daily
something
basis
that
every day. I want one client. If I want 10 clients, so basically I manage the load with my wife, and then like we have a little vacation plan in June. So then I took no one for that time, and
awesome. Well, this has been Nelson, this has
yes.
been awesome, buddy. It's been great. One, great to see you. And
Thank
two,
you.
great to
Same.
talk to you and see what you're up to. This is great. And see that you're, for me and for you, there's life after the NHL, and it was a fun ride, but it's also a lot of fun when you're on your own and doing things the way.
Maybe we'll do this again.
Yes, anytime. Well,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
maybe I'll come down and see you in St. Lucia. I know I went to your house in Columbus, which was awesome, and we saw the horses. We had a nice dinner and had some wine, and that was a
Yeah,
lot
yeah, that
of
was
fun.
great.
That was a good
Yeah,
time. But maybe I'll come down and visit you in St. Lucia and maybe during one of these cold winter months here in Minnesota. That'd be fun.
yeah. All right, yeah. So
Awesome,
I
awesome.
gotta go. I got a client in about less than 10 minutes here, but I was
Perfect.
very happy, very honored actually to be on your post. Very glad on your podcast. Very glad, and like I said again, we'll stay in touch.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Nelson. I appreciate your time, buddy.
Okay, all right. Same here. You take care.
Take care, Nelson.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye out.